the more budget-friendly and popular forms of making content for musicians today is the live performance video. You may have the opportunity to actually make many of these in the first few years of your filmmaking career, or really all along the way. They're often quite fun and relatively easy to do, and they also offer great value for that musical artist. Now, in my time, I have done loads of these, and almost entirely by myself, crew of one. I've also made ample mistakes along the way, and in today's video, you're going to learn how to avoid many of those. There are many ways to shoot a live musical performance, including using multiple cameras and angles used by bands such as Scary Pockets, which has become a very popular style on the YouTubes, or bigger production versions like this one from Demi Lovato. But what if you only own one camera and maybe a few lights? How do you bring that level of production value to an artist and make videos that you're actually proud of? That's what I'm going to show you in this video today. Now, before we jump in, I do want to quickly acknowledge and thank my friend Jadea Kelly for allowing me to shoot some behind the scenes footage of the video I did for her last year. And I think this shoot is a great example of what I hope to communicate today, that you can do everything with one camera, a handful of lights, by yourself. So let's go. The first decision is always around creative approach. For example, what locations do you or the musician/client have access to that will support this genre of music? Bluegrass and Norwegian death metal probably should not be shot the same. Does the client, for example, have a location or a mood request, or are they asking for some suggestions? Now, the most important consideration when recommending locations is one where you actually have control over the lighting, especially if you're shooting for longer periods of time, say if you have a large band. So as a rule of thumb, I generally avoid any location with big windows. Few locations in the world will guarantee you weather, and you really don't want that hard sunlight because it's going to be moving throughout the day and make your scenes relatively inconsistent. I foolishly did this once, and even with shears, it was a battle, and I have no interest in fighting that ever again. This can only reasonably be pulled off on an overcast day or where you have a single take and then you're done. To reiterate, you want the largest space you can find with the most amount of control for your light and your audio. Let's briefly discuss audio recording. This isn't something I know a lot about, so I'm not going to give really any advice except for this one thing. You want to ensure that the musical artist has a reputable audio technician who can bring all the audio recording equipment, monitor the audio, and record the music. They also need to provide speakers for adequate playback and hopefully mix and master the recording as well. This shouldn't be your job, and there isn't really enough time to do both jobs on the day, even if you knew how. Here's another critical point. Make sure that the band is aware that the recording may take up to an entire day, depending on the resources or scope of the project. You don't want any surprises or surly musicians who thought it was going to be a whole lot simpler. Once you and the artist liaison have decided on the creative concept, you can now either start scouting for locations or do a location survey where you've decided to shoot the video. It could be a club, a living room, a music studio, loft, middle of the desert, wherever. The goal now is to visit the location and try to solve every conceivable issue. And here are some things to consider. Number one, where's all your electricity going to come from? For example, will you have enough outlets and power for all of your lights, plus musicians' gear, plus audio recordist equipment? Where will you store all your cases and equipment so that it's easy to access and also in a safe area, but out of the way and out of the shot? And lastly, is the ceiling high enough to keep the lights out of the shot so that they're not so close to the musicians?
So my goal with a lot of these things is always to try to keep stands off the floor because that limits where I can shoot and how fast we can move. So when possible, we want to try to mount lights in the ceiling, and then that allows us just to move a whole lot faster as well, and it looks nicer.
While you're there, take some time to think about what the background is going to be. And try to keep the musicians away from the wall if you can. You really want to try to light them separately from the background. Now, this is the best time to ensure you have the staging and lighting plan so that you don't really waste any time on the shoot day.
Okay, are we ready to roll there, Tim?
Yep.
Okay, camera speed.
On the shoot day, you really just want it to be about execution, not about executive decisions or putting out fires. The goal is to get the artist into a place where they can connect with their performance and take the time they need to get it right.
Twice, right?
Okay.
Twice.
With that, let's move on to the day of production. This is the meat and potatoes of the shoot, and this is where you need to have a fairly precise schedule, but also enough contingency time for things that take a bit longer than you expected.
Always down to the wire. Okay.
Now, the one thing that I sometimes get pushback on is when should the musicians arrive? Well, I want them to arrive at the exact same time that I do. They should be loading their equipment into the space at the same time as me. Musicians really hate to wake up early, and they really hate to wait around, hence the pushback. But here's what eats up most of your day: blocking and setup.
In some respect, we do have to kind of crunch you in. Had I been able to do this all over again, I would have moved everybody forward like I wanted at the start and had the light here. That would have solved all my problems. But now
This is that time-hungry part of your setup. You need people in their actual places to light them. You need to give the audio engineer time to set up microphones.
Just have to move all the mics and set them up again, but then no problem.
Run lines, and then do sound checks. So you should try to decide on who goes where on the scout day if possible.
maybe I might move you forward a little bit too.
Okay.
Now, if you finish lighting before the band is finished sound checking, you can maximize that downtime by doing some test shots and reviewing them on a computer to make sure that you're happy with everything before you go in for the real takes. The reality, however, is that if you're doing this all by yourself, you quickly realize how easy it is for time to sort of just slip away on you.
It's 12:35 by the way.
Yeah.
Try to be aware of time and stick to the schedule so you don't find yourself sort of painfully behind. Once everybody is ready, we're going to go in for our master take. You're first aiming for the band to nail what I like to call the master take. And this is the take where the band is the most happiest with the recorded song. And this is also where some opinions diverge. Your master take can be a wide shot of the entire band. And this is what I prefer. This way, if a musician is out of sync at all, I can sometimes return to the actual take where they're all playing the exact same notes of the recorded take. I also like the wide because the band is still warming up, and their best performances are still to come. I start wide while everyone is still finding their voice and getting comfortable. Another option is to record the master take with the singer. Since we are often closest to that vocalist, it can sometimes be difficult to airband to your own song without getting maybe a little bit out of sync in moments. Staying tight on the singer guarantees perfect sync. Now, if I had two cameras, I would do the wide and the singer close up for the master. And that's basically what I did with Jadea. I had a B cam that was static, and that way it'll get me out of just about any bind. Yes, I know I said this was a one camera shoot tutorial. I didn't need the B cam, but I had it, so I used it. There we go. Moving on. After I know I have my master shot and the master wide, I'm going to go in for singles. Now, this is where all the musicians are going to airband back to their own recording. Most often, I will start with the lead vocalist because they are very important, so you want to get that shot in the bag. But I'll also just be looking at which musicians are looking the most ready or is the quickest and easiest relights, or based on some type of schedule. Either way, you want quick and easy shots that are going to start moving that energy and momentum along. Now, sometimes you can get lucky, depending on where you're shooting, but most often you do have to relight for each musician. This is really no different than how we shoot any sort of narrative or commercial film. Wide lighting often isn't flattering for close or medium shots. As long as you're not making any extreme changes, no one's really going to notice when you flip back and forth for the close to the wide and vice versa. Ideally, you want all musicians to stay until the very end because this allows you to shoot at any angle with musicians in the background. However, sometimes scheduling can be tricky and you might lose a musician mid-shoot.
Who needs to leave first?
We both have to.
In which case, you want to prioritize those musicians who have to leave early and then have a plan to sort of shoot the other mediums or close-ups without exposing the missing musician. Every style has a value, and I always like movement in mind. If all you have is a tripod, then shooting in 4K and doing some digital push-ins or pull-outs can also help elevate that energy. Many shooters will use gimbals or go handheld, and I usually stay away from this for most music except for maybe rock or hip-hop. Gimbals for me can be just a little bit too floaty and bobbing for me, especially in longer takes, and handheld can sometimes be just a little too herky-jerky. It may not be the most innovative to have a camera on a slider, but it's safe, and it works in almost every situation except for a rare few. Most clients are suitably impressed with slider shots. Let's quickly now talk about post-production for a moment. When editing, what I like to do is lay down my master track first and sync it to the provided audio. I sync all the tracks up using waveforms from the camera audio and then matching it to the recorded track. I build the timeline by layering each angle, going with closer angles near the top of the stack. I'll turn off all the clips except for that master angle, and I'll watch it through and mark anything that I like or I'm willing to use. I have my own coding system. you can use your own or use mine, which is blue means good, gold or yellow is great. And I think of it this way, gold equals this clip is gold, must use. I then cut out any sections that are unusable. This could be because the camera got knocked, or it wasn't interesting or complimentary. What you're left with is everything you're willing to use. Now is when you need to think about the dynamics of the song. Sometimes I'll mark where verses and choruses are, or where the energy of the song changes. This way I have a sense of where to play out longer clips and where to cut faster for intensity or where to feature soloists. I'll start by favoring the gold footage if it makes sense, and then triage my way down to fill the gaps. This still ends up being a bit of a hodgepodge and requires having to kill some of your favorite moments for the greater good of the entire video, but it shouldn't take too long to massage together. And that is it for today, my friends, and I'm certain that some of you out there have shot many live performance videos, and maybe you have some great tips or tricks that you'd like to share, so please do that in the comments section. And as always, please subscribe to this channel for more great videos like this and comment, as I just said, in the comment section down below. For me, for now, I'm out. Peace.